about a tape and that there was this riot outside the Benghazi consulate, which there wasn't.
Natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video.
I was in chronic pain, and my family struggling to make ends meet, food and gas prices going up. Even keeping my job was iffy. Then I learned about a new miracle drug made in Washington, D.C. Spenditol. Spenditol is Washington's answer to all the painful problems Americans face. How to borrow $800 billion for a stimulus that didn't create jobs or fix the economy? Spenditol.
Spenditol is not for everyone. Side effects may include a mountain of government debt piled on our kids, a sudden loss of freedoms, higher prices for everything, leaving our kids a lesser America than we had. Ask your doctor or congressman if your conscience is strong enough for Spenditol.
And it's so popular in Washington, we have to import trillions more of it from China. Spenditol makes you feel better now and pushes off the really bad stuff till later, for them to deal with.
Call the White House and Congress. Tell them, stop spending it all.
And welcome back into the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the Conservative Broadcast Media Network. I'm your host, Jim Lee. Thanks for being here this evening. Now, pardon that humorous little interlude there about Spenditol, but before that, you heard a series of sound bites around what many are affectionately calling Benghazi Gate. And I'll tell you, this is not a spontaneous response to the activities of this week. And my focus is not exclusively on the president, but rather, again, continuing the theme from the opening monologue. What in the wide world of sports is going on? You know, in this past week, we have seen even more of the institutions that we typically hold in esteem. So obviously I'm not talking about the president or Congress, or used car salesmen or lawyers. But, you know, the institution of the military is one of the most trusted institutions in survey after survey of the American people. And we have seen just a breathtaking unraveling of things going on. We had the general, the first general of the African Command, who was disciplined. I don't know if convicted is the right term. Held accountable for some excessive spending, some extravagant spending that apparently he had done in his previous role before assuming command for the African Command and then continuing during his tenure there. Four-star general, a black four-star general, who was stripped of one of his stars. And I got to tell you, in the institution of the military, to be stripped of rank at that level is no small thing. And you can get into the discussion about whether or not, if something like this had happened in the private sector, where you'd be talking about not just being stripped of rank and demoted, but actually being fired and foregoing one's retirement. But that's a conversation for another time. My point here is that because of what this general did, the extravagant spending, he has been ordered to pay back $82,000. $82,000. And in the process will be stripped of one of his stars and will retire as a lieutenant general instead of a full 4-star general. Then we have the centerpiece in this past week, General David Petraeus, who last Friday, at least what appeared sudden to those of us on the outside, it's unknown precisely how sudden it was to those on the inside. I suspect not very. But we have a General Petraeus, a retired 4-star Army general, ostensibly rose to the highest of levels, even among 4 stars, and the then head of the CIA, where we learn that he is guilty of self-admitted adultery, an affair with the biographer who wrote a book about him. And we are supposed to believe that merely because of an offense that didn't seem to have any impact on Bill Clinton when he had sexual relations, in spite of his claims, with a woman who was not his wife, and many others in Washington who I'm sure are guilty of similar transgressions. They were not required to resign from office, but General Petraeus did. And, here you have a man who spent his entire adult life, since graduating from West Point, all the way to rising to the highest of the ranks in the military, has an otherwise stellar career, impeccable record, known for both his intelligence and his integrity, knows what the Uniform Code of Military Justice holds as a standard. For those of you unfamiliar with the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there is a law that supersedes U.S. law, civil law, for those who are in the military. It's called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and the Uniform Code still considers adultery to be wrong. So David Petraeus is supposedly using personal email accounts to exchange salacious information. We have no evidence as yet to indicate that any classified information was exchanged directly from General Petraeus to Ms. Broadwell, the mistress in this case. But we do know that the mistress is in possession of all sorts of classified materials, that the mistress is also a West Point graduate, but is also married to someone other than David Petraeus. But all this is going on, and it seems all of a sudden there are questions swirling about who knew what when. We have the fact that General Petraeus was supposed to be testifying, and late-breaking news today, we learned that he will still testify on Friday, but was scheduled to testify. And then we have the tie between these two to another woman, Jill Kelly, in Tampa, Florida, who apparently has been exchanging emails with yet another 4-star officer, Marine General John Allen. And apparently General Allen, although no suspicions of sharing classified information, but the man's quite a prestigious purveyor of emails, because the number is estimated to be somewhere between 20 and 30,000. Now, as a retired member of the military, I'm scratching my head kind of wondering how somebody on active duty is able to have the time, particularly somebody at that level who is commanding things in Afghanistan, probably not in the coziest of locations, not kicking back in the Kabul Hilton in a plush 4-star resort, sitting there with great wireless access on his computer, sending emails, but I digress. But we're expected to believe that, pay no attention here, these things have nothing to do with anything that's going on with regard to national security, with regard to this administration. They are simply individual lapses of good judgment. These 3 examples that I just gave you, all of them at one point 4-star general officers, having demonstrated apparently some level of competent judgment to achieve the ranks and positions that they hold or did hold. All of these things happening at the same time. Now, hold on. I'm not going down the conspiracy theorist path. I don't have any tinfoil on my head at the moment. I'm just asking, what in the wide world of sports is going on? Where is the leadership? Where are those core characteristics, the character that we used to turn to the military and respect? We had respect for our military leaders. We had respect for the military in general. But we continue to see even more breakdown in order and decorum, in integrity, and in trustworthiness in one of our most sacred institutions. It defies common sense. It defies rational thought to think that these are just merely inadvertent coincidences? Or does it rather point to a pattern? How far back you want to go? Bush, Clinton, Monica, Nixon, Reagan, Iran-Contra, Nixon, Watergate, Kennedy, his little dalliances. You have to ask yourself, there is a pattern here. And it's the continued erosion in the terms of consensus expectations and standards of behavior that we used to hold so dear. We've become so relativistic, and we're seeing the fruits of that as a nation. Now, I, for one, take no joy in imagining what Holly Petraeus, David Petraeus' wife of, I believe, 37 years, and their family must be going through to know that David, in his own words, made such stupid decisions, but to also have to go through all of this on the front page of every single media outlet you can imagine. I take no joy in that. But they do serve as wonderful examples of the consequences of where things are going as a society and as a culture. And here it is showing up in one of the entities for which we had the most trust. How much longer can that remain? You're listening to the Palmetto Conservative Show here on the